Peace and blessings, my brothers and sisters. I want to talk about a subject that is really important. You know what I mean? We're dealing with the subject called Valentine's Day. And the reason why I'm talking about Valentine's Day, because today's date is dealing with February the 14th, according to the Gregorian calendar, 2020. And the question goes out, I like to ask, for your brothers and sisters all around the world. Is it okay for a Christian that call themselves following Jesus and loving him with all their heart, with all their mind, with all their soul, to celebrate Valentine's Day? Is it okay for you, brothers and sisters all around the world? It doesn't matter what race and ethnic background you come from. Is it okay for you to celebrate Valentine's Day? You know what I mean? Let's find out what God had to say about it, and let's go into the history of it. But right now, I want to dive into the history about Valentine's Day. I got this information right here about the history of Valentine's Day, and I'm going to read it to you. It said February was the month in which people celebrated Lupercalia. And Lupercalia was a festival that took place in pagan Rome. A festival honoring the birth of Romulus and Remus, the twin founders of the city, as Lupercalia evolved in time went on and morphed into a festival honoring fertility and the coming of spring. So right there let you know that in the month of February, the celebration of Lupercalia, a festival honoring the birth of Romulus and Remus, and dealing with the honor of fertility, we're dealing with what? Bringing in the coming season called springtime. You know what I mean? So it lets you know it's dealing with what? The celebration of nature worshiping, and dealing with what? The worship of the sun. You know what I mean? So the history of Valentine's Day was in the month of February, which is dealing with what? The festival honoring fertility and the coming of spring. You know what I mean? That season called spring. It was a festival honoring the birth of Romulus and Remus. And then we're going to go into the history part of what the festival and what the men and women used to do during that festival time in pagan Rome. It says, according to legend, young women would place their names in an urn. And an urn is like another word for a basket. Eligible men would draw a name from that woman, and they would couple up later on for the rest of their night. And what I mean by they would couple up, you already know, brothers and sisters, you have enough intelligence to understand. Yeah, they went ahead and started knocking the boots. They went ahead and started what? Committing fornication, committing adultery, because sometimes when they used to have that game, when the woman would put their names inside a basket, and then the men would draw the names out, and then they saw the woman name, and they would call that woman's name. The name of that woman that they would call could have been somebody else's wife, and they would go away with somebody else's wife and bounce on that person's wife and have sex with that woman's wife, and that man probably didn't know nothing about it. But if that man did found out, you see that symbol of Valentine's Day, when you see the heart with the arrow going through, his heart would be broken. His heart would be like, messed up. I mean, it would really mess his mind up. So it just lets you know right then and there that was a hurting festival that took place in pagan Rome. So I'm going to read that paragraph again. According to legend, the young woman would place their names in an urn. Another word for urn means a basket. Eligible men would draw a name, and the couple would pair off for the rest of the festival, and sometimes even longer. That means they would have what? They would commit fornication or commit adultery. As Christianity progressed into Rome, that means that when pagan Rome became papal Rome, the practice was decried as pagan and immoral, and done away with Pope Gelasius around 500 BC. Recently, there have been some, now I'm not going to go into that part. And then it became more of a spiritual celebration by Pope Gelasius Let me go ahead and read that. So he took the pagan immorality and trying to make it holy, because the popes over there in the Roman time, like they do now, they believe that they have authority over the Word of God. They believe that they are God besides God. That's why they go by the title Holy Father. Now they trying to take a pagan ritual that took place during the time of pagan Rome called Lupercalia. You know what I mean? Then the Pope called Pope Galasius was trying to make it more of a spiritual celebration. And let me go ahead and read you some of this information. Around the same time that the love lottery was being eliminated, Pope Galasius had a brilliant idea. Why not replace the lottery with something a bit more spiritual? He changed the love lottery to a lottery of the saints. Instead of pulling a pretty girl's name from the urn or a basket, the young men pulled the name of a saint. The challenge for these bachelors was to try to be more saint-like in the coming year, studying and learning about the messages of their individual saint. So right there was no better either, because in the Roman Catholic Church, they promote the worship of what? The saints. It's like you worshiping men. And the Word of God says in the book of Acts chapter 5 verse 29, we ought to obey God rather than men. And when you go to Romans chapter 3 verse 4, it said, let God be true, but every man be a liar. And let's go more into Valentine's Day. So we know that Valentine's Day was what? Dealing with the pagan worship of the sun, you know what I mean, dealing with that festival, and plus in the same time, it represents when the young men will pick the paper from the basket, and when they pull out the paper from the basket, the woman's name that they had, they will go with that man. They will go with that woman, you know what I mean, during that time, and commit sexual immorality. But we're going to go further into the Word of God and find out what the Word of God says about Valentine's Day.